This is The Real Deal, where real estate meets real life. Whether you're a seasoned real estate expert, a first-time home buyer, or if you're simply passionate about hearing small business stories, this is the podcast for you. Join us as we dive deep into the world of real estate and beyond.
Welcome to episode 11 of The Real Deal. I am your host, Janine Igliane, with my co-host. Ryan Hatcher. What's up, Ryan?
Hey, what's up?
I'm super pumped for today's episode because our guest today is none other than my husband, Rey Igliane.
The Rey Man.
The Rey Man. Firefighter extraordinaire. So I did a letter of the heart. If you work with me and our team, I send out every other month letters to all of my clients, and they're just personal letters, kind of getting to know me and maybe a struggle or something that I've overcome. And recently I shared your story, Rey, and I got so much feedback from that letter where people just really loved your story. They found it super encouraging and inspiring and just really cool. So we kind of thought, why not share it here for everybody to hear? Because there's so many lessons in what you had to deal with on your journey to become a firefighter. So
yeah, and there's probably other things that were left out in the letter.
Yeah, well, you can only do so much. So hopefully we can get to all of that today. So just to start, tell us what made you want to become a firefighter, and do you remember when that moment was?
I think growing up in a military family, being part of public service kind of groomed me for the fire service. And my desires didn't occur until 9/11 happened, 2001. Wait, is that right? 2001?
Yeah,
9/11,
yeah.
2001?
Yeah.
I just graduated college of August, and I was going into graduate studies, going for my master's, waiting to get into the master's program, and 9/11 happened, and I was just sitting in class, and I just told myself, I don't want to do this. And that came to the realization I want to help people, whether go into the military or go into public service in some capacity or public safety. I wanted to help people because I think back then, as a man, I felt like I should serve a greater cause.
Yeah.
And me being in the position I was, I felt like I was called to do something else. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of struck the chord into me to pursue fire service. And it wasn't until 2004, shortly after I graduated and I was working in my field, was when I took my first fire science class.
Mm-hmm. And then for you, just having that desire and looking at the different options, how did you settle on firefighting? Why that career?
I think while I was working in athletic training for prior to that for about 17 years, for any major calls that we went on or that occurred, such as concussions or any traumatic calls occurring on the field, I'd always call fire for assistance. And being involved in team sports, it was kind of cool seeing how the fire department all came together. Each person had a role. They weren't stressed out, and they all worked together to serve the patient.
I love that. I feel like that's kind of like us, right? And working on a team, and that's why working as a team in real estate is so beneficial because we each have our roles. We all work together. And when everybody does their job, the process just goes so smoothly, right? And for you guys in the fire department, that's even more important that everybody knows their role and does it, cool, calm, and collected. And when you've done it enough times, then it's a lot easier. And again, that's one of the things I love about what we do is just having that experience where we've done it so many times. It's like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
So I always try to think about what is the theme of this discussion. And so teamwork is a big one. But I know the word perseverance comes to mind when I think of your story. So why don't you tell us about the process of becoming a firefighter and what you went through, because it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So perseverance. As a young age teenager, I didn't know that word. I knew about skateboarding. I knew about sports. And it wasn't until adulthood where I could look back at my childhood and think about like perseverance. As a 10-year-old going into my teenage years, skateboarding, we did a lot of persevering things, such as doing tricks. Going into high school as a freshman, sophomore, trying to get on the team as a football player or playing sports. There's a lot of perseverance that has to occur to be a starter. And then when I made the decision to go into the fire service, I went in there really green, just as a baby learning how to walk. I remember my first CPAT, which is a physical test. I almost threw the sledgehammer into the proctor. And so,
Because you were mad?
because I didn't know how to hold the
Really?
tool.
Wow.
So each time I tested, I learned something. And then going back at certain things I look back at, and I've shared this with Janine, we learn things as we grow. And one of the things I learned was, I remember being on a step mill, and I was thinking to myself, man, I just want to step off. I just want to hang it up, just go home.
That's like a Stairmaster.
Stairmaster,
right?
yep.
Mhm.
And they put a weight on you. You have a helmet on, and I just thinking to myself, if our Lord Jesus Christ carried a cross across towns, I could do this. And so I remember that,
Wow.
and
that kind of pushed me to go further into this testing process.
Okay, so you shared some of the physical aspects of being a firefighter, and obviously I know your journey, but from when you first really started going at it till the time that you finally got hired was how long?
So there was a hiatus where I took time off. So 2004, 2005, after Elise was born, was when I started.
I remember there's a picture of him in his suit getting ready to go for an interview, which was, there's steps to becoming a firefighter. You got to pass your written test first, right? Mm-hmm. Then you have to do a physical, and then you have a interview, oral interview or panel interview, and then you go to a chief's interview. And he was at an interview process, and Elise is like a new little baby, and we have a picture of him in that. And that was like your first real interview. We were so excited.
Yep.
Who would have known from that time that you would have had hundreds of more processes to go through, from testing to interviewing, until your goal became to come to fruition?
Yeah, it took a long time, and each time I learned something new. I learned how to articulate better, how to present myself better, what suits to wear, what colors to wear, just how to make eye contact with the interviewees or interviewers, and then also like what Ryan asked, persevering through the process. And one captain told me, with my interview story, was keep your story the same, because one department will buy into it. And so I never steered away from my story. It was always focused on family and persevering.
You also were really great about reaching out to others. And kind of like you just said, that captain had given you advice. You were great about reaching out to others that were already in the fire department and asking them for help. And they were great about helping to coach you, which again, that's something that we do oftentimes, is looking to others that have gone before us to have them share with us what they've done and what they've done well. And I think that's also something that we're really good at doing, is we're totally happy to share, right? We share everything that we do. We're an open book, because it's so good to help those. And those are some of the people that poured into you that were super helpful. Tell them about the time, Ray, where you were here in Gilbert and you came super close.
Well, this one time in Gilbert, I became super close. Actually, it was a hard time. It was 2008. I got into the Gilbert Internship Academy. Got laid off from my previous jobs, and I was talking to a good friend of mine in California, Adam, and he said, there's a job here for you if you want it. And so I kind of held off on it. I went through the Gilbert process. There was about 48 of us that went through the process. And around that time, there was a financial shift. There was a housing crisis going on. People were getting laid off. And so that's why I got laid off. I got laid off from Scottsdale Healthcare.
But Gilbert Fire, you were one of 12 in their intern academy.
Yep, I was one of the 48. And then halfway through the academy, one of the captains said, we have to cut the people that we have to hire. So it went from 48 to 20. And so we can only hire 20 of you guys. And then the last week of the academy, they said, okay, we can only hire 3 of you guys because of the budget. And so that was devastating, but it kind of opened up doors for me in California. And then it was a learning process.
Yeah.
It was a learning process.
So from the time you started to the time you actually became a firefighter, how many years are we talking?
I'd say about 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you were working on it consistently?
There was a hiatus, like I mentioned.
Yeah.
I was working at Edison, Southern California Edison. I was happy with that job there. Like I mentioned, my friend Adam set me up there, and people that work there work 30 plus years. It was kind of like the Intel in California.
You got to that place because you got to a point where you were just really discouraged with the fire department, especially after Gilbert not working out. You were like, okay, maybe this isn't for me. And you had already been testing so many times. What I didn't even realize, most people don't realize, is that just to get an application, people wait in line for hours. And there are hundreds of people that want to apply. And so you're lucky to even get an application. And then from there, you're lucky every step that you're competing against hundreds of people. Mm-hmm. So to get to that point where you're in the academy, you're so close, you can touch it. And then to have that pulled out from you, that was really hard. So you were kind of like, okay, I'm done. I'm going to go do this, move back to California. And yet you always still kind of had that passion in you. It never went away.
It never went away. As a matter of fact, I had your dad wait for me in line one year. I forgot what department it was. I think it was like LA County or Long Beach.
One of those.
And he waited in line for me because I had to work. But that's how much I wanted it. That's how much drive I had. Mm-hmm. I would have other people standing in there.
How many times were you rejected? Do you know?
I don't know.
Give an idea.
Yeah, ballpark.
I'd say about, out of the Chiefs interviews I've had, I'd say about a good handful of times.
When you got to that final step. But up until that, you applied for hundreds and hundreds of places and you wouldn't even make it. It was very frustrating for me sometimes to be like, why isn't he doing it? There were times where we would have conversations and I would have those doubts about like, okay, maybe it's time to give up and move on. But you would say to me, and I remember this so clearly, like I was made for this. Like I really believe in my soul, I was made to help other people. And you really felt like that was God's calling on your life, was to be in that helping role. And having the experience of the athletic training and having to stay calm under pressure, I think really helped you. One of the moments I remember, let's flash forward to you getting your first firefighting job when they hired you. Talk about that.
So my first department I worked for outside of being a reserve was Drexel Heights Fire in Tucson. And I remember testing for them, going through that whole process. I remember interviewing for them. And I remember after the interview, I called you from the McDonald's parking lot, and I said, I got the job, even without them offering me the job, because I felt like my interview was good. And then...
did you tear up?
I think I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might have shed like 2 tears.
It reminds me of like the movie Rudy.
Yeah.
When he finally makes the team.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sure I would have.
Yeah, I just remember having that confidence. And you could tell with the panel interview, like how they presented themselves afterwards, like smiles, giving me good feedback, body language. And I remember leaving there confident, and then within a couple of days, their HR gal called me up and offered me the position.
I still remember when you called me to tell me, and I could tell he had something to say, and I was kind of like, okay, what's up? And then he was like, I got the job. And I was like, oh my gosh, you guys, just to go that long of being told no and to finally have it happen was kind of surreal. It was super cool. And before I go on, I think, and I've said this to so many people, your example, Ray, of getting told no time and time again, and yet still believing in your heart that this is what you were made for and not letting those no's stop you. Most people would have said, I'm done. Like, clearly this isn't for me. I'm not meant for this. I can't take the rejection anymore. And yet you continued to persevere through that. So what made you keep going when you were getting all of these no's time and time again?
I remember you went to a career fair or some kind of event. I wasn't there. And you asked there was a tent there with firemen from Mesa. And you asked them a question like what does it take? Why is my husband getting rejected? And he mentioned to you the people that stop in the process are the people that aren't firefighters. So if you want to be a firefighter, just keep on going. It'll happen. So that was the point where I knew I was gonna be a firefighter, but it was just a timing thing.
A matter of when.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that actually applies to what we do a lot.
For sure.
Not only in sales and getting rejected and just learning how to overcome that fear and just keep going on because you know you're going to be successful. And it really is a numbers game. But it reminds me of new agents that start off in this field because a lot of people feel like being a realtor is going to be glamorous. They're going to make a lot of money and they get to show homes and they love homes. And then they realize it's really hard. And it doesn't come quickly for a lot of people, most people. And especially with what we do with geographic farming, it may take a year before it really starts to settle in. Mm-hmm. And you're seeing the results of your work. So you're planting seeds, but you're not harvesting yet. So I love this because most agents will quit before it really hits. Yeah. Before they start to see that, the fruits of their labor. So. Yeah.
That's cool. Awesome. So the ones that are the firefighters are the ones that didn't give up, right? Because there's a good chance that all of them got rejected several times. One of the other moments that stands out to me was when you got hired on with Scottsdale. And well, before I go there, you had, prior to getting hired on with Drexel Heights, you had decided, what I've been doing hasn't been working. I keep testing, I keep applying, I keep interviewing, and I'm not getting it. So, right, the definition of insanity is continually doing the same thing and expecting a different result. You finally said, okay, I'm going to try something different. And that's when you decided to put yourself through the Fire Academy on your own. Mm-hmm. Talk about that experience.
So like you said, this is prior to Drexel Heights. This was at a point in my life where I was working at Phoenix Children's Hospital, and they gave me opportunities, but I maxed out on those opportunities. I maxed out on my pay scale. There wasn't any growth for me there unless I went to further educate myself. And this was at a time in our lives where the business was thriving, and
that'd be our real estate business.
So the business was thriving, and I just asked you, what if I put myself through the academy? This will open up doors for me, and it'll give me more knowledge on the profession, and it'll help me with the interviewing.
Which meant you had to take time, amount of time off of work.
So no money coming in. Right. And how long did the academy last?
I did take time off of work, but I was fortunate to have a good medical director where she was able to work around my schedule and giving me some freedom there. And I had set a good foundation at the school I was working at with student athletic trainers, and they were all helping me out as far as getting everything all prepped up and ready to go. So whenever I came to work, it was just like a well-oiled machine.
But you took that time off and you weren't working. How long was that for the academy?
That was a 16-week academy.
Wow.
And that is really physical. So it's really hard work. You're having to do crazy drills, run up towers with 75 pounds of gear on, lots of hard work. But it was all worth it, right?
It was worth it. That 16 weeks, it was a part-time academy. So Tuesday, Thursdays, and all day Saturday. It laid down the foundation for what I was going to go through.
You met some awesome people
I did.
And
I met some awesome people with Scottsdale.
in the graduation.
Yep, my captains, the director were both from Scottsdale, and I felt like it was just meant to happen leading up to Scottsdale.
And at graduation, you got recruited to class.
Uh-huh.
You got to give the graduation speech, and you were one of the oldest in the academy at that time, right?
I was.
Yeah.
Yes.
So super cool to see you go through that, see you, I think, push yourself physically more than you even thought you could, right? But because behind that was just this burning desire and passion to do what you thought you were, or meant, or believed that you were made to do, right? I kind of feel like that for us in real estate, and to your point earlier, Ryan, like there's a lot of rejection. There's a lot of getting told no. There's a lot of, I'm doing this and nothing's happening. Right. And so that can be frustrating. But if you believe that what you're doing is the right thing, that what you're supposed to be doing and meant to be doing, you'll persevere and hang in there. Which for sure, I feel like I can see that in my career. I can see it in yours. And with new agents, I try to tell them that same thing, right? Of just like hang in there, keep doing it. It will pay off. So speaking of paying off, you ended up getting hired on with Scottsdale, and then you had to go through a whole other academy. And that was for how many weeks?
That was another 16 weeks.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
And you were for sure the oldest at that time.
I was.
How old were you?
I think you were like 42.
Yeah.
And I remember he would come home, you guys, and he would just go in the bath, like take an Epsom salt bath and just fall asleep in the bath. He was so tired because it was so physically hard. But I remember one time we went out to dinner. It was probably halfway through. And in fairness, you were like, I think I'm just going to go back to Drexel Heights. I think I'm going to quit and just go back. And I was like, what?
That's a long ways away. I mean, it's a 2-hour drive, right?
It was.
Yeah.
But he knew he had that job there, that they would be happy to have him. And it was, you were like in the thick of that tough part of the academy. And I remember saying to you, no, you're not doing that. And that's one of the things I look at and I think is super cool, because you've been that for me in a marriage, right? Where you can encourage the other person when they're weak, you're strong. And I feel like that was a moment where you were having an honest moment of weakness, of just being tired and burnt out and exhausted. And like, why am I going through this again? I'm already a firefighter. I could go back to my old department. And I was like, no, you have come this far. And you had always said that Scottsdale was kind of your dream department, dream city to work for. And it was like, you've come, like you're not giving up. And then it was almost like you were like, okay, I'm not. And then again, you went and graduated. And didn't you also get recruited to the class?
No, not this time.
Oh, okay. Sorry. But you did. You finished the academy, and now you've been with Scottsdale for how long?
This year will be 4 years.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, go ahead.
Yeah.
So, like you mentioned, I got hired on with Scottsdale during the academy. And I think that was one of the most physically hard academies that I've gone through, or physically anything that I've gone through. They really break you down. The first 8 weeks is just, they do a good job with breaking you down.
So you're up all night and you're running, and
Yeah.
what are you doing?
We're not up all night. It's a day academy, so it's 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, and you're just going through the ringer.
Like, tell them a kind of a typical day.
So like on a Tuesday, Thursday, you wake up, do your morning routine, get to the academy around 6. Our first thing that we do is set up everything in the academy for a skills course. And the skills course is work hardening. So we do a lot of functional things like farmer carries, tire drags, hose pulls, go up and down the towers with tools, and we run, and we do all this in turnouts. And
Which are what?
Turnouts are our bunker gears, everything that is our protective equipment for the fire service. And we have a bottle, a SCBA bottle that we braid down. So
You start off with like a lot of physical stuff.
Yeah, and that's about an hour and a half. Mm-hmm. And then we break for a little bit, and then we do a lot of skills related to the fire service. And then we break for lunch, and then we do it again, and then we do a lot of functional activities. And if we are disciplined or have to get reset, what they say, we just get wrecked. So one of the things, like if we don't follow attention to detail, we'll run towers until someone faints.
And if someone messes up, then the whole crew, everybody has to get punished for it.
Yep. And one of the things that I did wrong was I walked backwards. You're not supposed to walk backwards on the fire ground. So I walked backwards on the fire ground, and I had to sit in a tire, crisscross applesauce, hold a blue falcon, which is a military tradition, and they had to drag me from one hydrant to the next. And each person had to take turns dragging me from one hydrant to the next.
Wow.
And I had to sit there and just take it and learn, because the blue falcon symbolizes that you screwed over your buddy. So.
And then they would also, I don't know what they're called, the instructors or whatever, would really be hard on you guys. Like mentally would be like, why don't you just give up? You're not made for this, right? They would kind of talk trash to you guys a lot, because so much of what you do is mental too. You guys go through a lot of hard stuff. So kind of flash forward and maybe tell us some of your calls. Like, what are some of your memorable calls? I'll just leave it at that. I'll just let you have free reign.
I think I was going to tell this to Ryan earlier. I think one of your first calls in the fire service is going to be memorable. There's a lot of memorable calls that you don't want to remember. One of the first calls I had was a code when I was working at Drexel Heights. A code is when someone is presented as someone is dead, and they have a pulse, or they're pulseless, and someone's doing CPR. So the neighbor where the patient was doing compressions, and I get out of the truck, I grab the boxes, the monitor, and I just remember everything happening in slow motion. So my crew goes in, and then the lady that answers the door is wearing like this silk gown, and it was just so weird because it happened all in slow motion. And because of the breeze, like her silk gown was like flying, like kind of like in a movie. It was just kind of.
But she was older.
She was older. She was probably in her 70s, late 60s, and she's all, he's over there, and I'm all okay. And so I go back there, and the medics are getting everything ready, and then the neighbor's doing compressions on the guy, and this guy is like just butt naked, and the medic asks about past medical history, blah blah blah, and the lady or wife said, yeah, we were just having sex, and gave us some history, and I just heard Viagra, and I looked down, and the guy had a woody just straight up in the air. And so the guy's doing compression, and I just take over, and I'm just doing compressions, and I look down, and I'm like, all right, let me position myself differently. So I finish compressions, and we get him on a spine board, and I'm like, man, his thing's just hanging out. So I just get a towel that we cover him up. And so we're in the back of the ambulance, and I'm, doing breathing for him and doing compressions, and his woody is just still up. and it's a long transport. And that was one of the first codes.
That's memorable.
Yeah, you won't forget about.
So did he OD on it or what?
I don't know if he OD'd, but they got pulses back.
So he survived.
He survived.
What a story.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I wish I could go back and tell him the whole story.
No.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
You've had some, obviously, you guys are first responders, so you see some hard stuff but you have some really cool moments. And one of the things that I've always said about you, babe, is that you were made to help people. You're so good. You're so calm under pressure. And as your wife, I feel like you really are getting to live out your God-given who he created you to be, which is to go out there and be helpful to others. And I've always said this, that whoever you are working on, they are blessed to have you, because I know that you're going to do a good job for them. So super awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm so proud of you. I think as your wife, as our kid's dad, like what an awesome example for you to just persevere through all of that rejection, to stay so focused on what you felt was what you were supposed to be doing, and just to and not just keep doing the same thing, but to look at it and say, okay, what can I do better? How can I get closer? Because clearly what I was doing wasn't working. So let me try this. Let me try that. Let me reach out to people I know and really pull on those resources. And I'm so proud of you.
Yeah, it's definitely a team environment for the fire service, and it relates to a lot of things, whether you relate it to farming or real estate, or if you relate it to sports. A lot of things translate into the fire service. So anyone that wants to become a firefighter, if you work at Home Depot, or if you work at an auto shop, or if you work in as a dog trainer, it all relates to the fire service. You just gotta dig down deep and find your story and see how it relates. So.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, babe. Anything else, Ryan?
No. Thanks for coming and sharing your story.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Real Deal, where real estate meets real life. Make sure to follow or subscribe to the Home Selling Team on YouTube, Instagram, and Spotify to stay up to date with our podcast.